All right, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure, as always, to introduce this fella. Say hi, Brandon.
Hello. How's it going?
Brandon is like, gosh, you can start a franchise, dude, because you have become like he's everybody's go-to. It's like there are Brandons out there. They're not all Brandon, but we have a Brandon franchise where people learn how to be Brandon for when he's too busy. We'll talk about that some other time.
It's a
I
delicate
swear
way
to
to
God,
put
I
it,
have
yeah.
not been drinking. Um, just too much coffee today. So let's just get right to it. OBS and Zoom has become something that is doable, and most of us didn't think it was. And you gave a really great talk on this. God, was it December? I think it
I think
was
so, yeah. Yeah, I
December.
think it was
Yeah.
December.
Yeah, and I rewatched it today myself, but personally, if you repeated everything that you said in that, it would not be too much. But
Right.
I'm looking forward to hearing what else you got for us today. So I'm going to shut up and turn the microphone over to our pal, Brandon O'Sullivan.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? Good to see many of you all again. So we went over some things. I'm gonna start off just by kind of outlining again in a hopefully better way than I did last time the benefits of using OBS and Zoom together, and also in this I can answer a few questions that were posed to me at the end of last talk that now I have the correct answer to. So first off, the benefits of using OBS and Zoom together if you are a performer is to standardize your sound across all platforms. You might know that some venues will require you to stream into a Zoom meeting, or maybe they only do things in Restream Studio, or maybe they only use StreamYard. The benefit of setting up your OBS to work this way with NDI, which was, you know, I'll get to that in a second. For those of you who didn't catch the last video, is that this allows you to standardize your sound everywhere. So your sound checks will be super easy. Once you get it dialed in OBS and you know how to connect it to the other programs, it's very, very simple. And most of my clients, once we get their sound set up perfectly in OBS, like it doesn't matter what other program we're on, a sound check is as easy as, can you hear everything? Yep, good. Okay, moving on. So that's the biggest benefit to me for most of you. If you are a venue or host house concerts, um, one of the biggest benefits to me personally, and you will also benefit from this as well, is that the audio mixer in OBS is where you can visually see the levels in dBs, is a lot better than what's like on Zoom by itself, and most programs don't even have that. So if you have multiple artists, like the other night I did the Greenwich Village Folk Festival, and we've got 10 or 12 artists, and I can, during sound check, I can keep an eye on where everybody's levels are and make sure that each artist is kind of relatively within the same range. And the other benefit of that too is if I'm streaming out of OBS and I have one musician who's a lot quieter for some reason all of a sudden, I can just go into OBS and boost their audio by 2 dB, 4 dB until I get it to the right level. So that makes my job a lot easier sometimes. Um, also, if you are like, I know there's some of you own like recording studios and do big productions, maybe have your own companies. If you are a production that has multiple computers working, you can use this method of connecting OBS and NDI to automatically, instantly stream anything from one computer to the next, as long as they're both programmed or plugged into Ethernet on the same network, which I do that a lot. That's probably above what most of you are probably used to or need. So I won't go into that too much. And then for both performers and musicians, the post production capabilities, things like this. So you can have a logo up in the corner. You can have little overlays down at the bottom, and it's very simple. I'll show you how to set this up in a minute and how to make it simple to transition between them. You can set up something like scrolling text at the bottom. All this was done minus the logos. This text down at the bottom that's scrolling was done in OBS completely. All you have to do is you can type in the text and you can create little cheap overlays. You can't do very like this logo I've got in the top corner. You can't do something that complicated with a transparency in OBS alone. But something like down at the bottom, that was just OBS. So you can have scrolling text, you could have it scrolling up like Star Wars, you could have it static text. So there's a lot of options. And then let me get rid of that distracting stuff. And then another cool thing for both is the live audience interaction, which I cannot expound upon enough. And think of, for example, even if you don't host concerts on Zoom, if you're just streaming to Facebook, if you're just streaming to whatever program, you can offer your patrons on Patreon. I almost said Patreon. I'm getting better at saying that correctly. A lot of my clients, we've started using Zoom as a backstage pass VIP area just for patrons. So you setting it up this way, you can also you're basically managing everything in OBS, and through linking it with NDI, which we'll get to in just a second, you can export the live applause at the end of a show or at the end of a song into your stream on Facebook. So people don't need to see the people in Zoom. They don't need to be in Zoom. But after you finish the song, they can hear applause, and that changes the game, not just for you as a performer, but me, if I'm watching a show on Facebook and I have the option to watch two shows that are pretty good from artists I like, and one of them has live applause in it, that changes it in my mind, and it reminds me more of going to see a show, and I'm much more likely to go back to that second one than I would the first. And then basically the bottom line of why, I know some of you wisely asked the question, can't you do things like overlays in StreamYard or Restream Studio? This is true. You can't do as much with it as long as you're capable of creating your own logos, stuff like that. If you use Photoshop or if you use Canva, for example, you can make those things and import them into StreamYard or Restream Studio. You can't make them in OBS or in those programs like you can in OBS. Also, OBS is free. It's the main thing. So all these other things are programs you have to purchase or subscriptions you have to pay for on a monthly basis. And me, myself, I have obviously a lot of paid subscriptions going every month. And the production capabilities that OBS offers, plus the fact that it's free, is huge for me. And then a couple of things to touch on really quickly. We're going to be talking about overlays and transparencies in a little bit. A general recommendation for people, because there's so many different programs and they're all different, is if you use Canva, just go to Google and look up how to make a transparent background or logo on Canva. If you use Photoshop, do the same thing. There's very simple 3 to 4 bullet point guides that will teach you how to do that in whatever program you use. I think getting into that in here will largely take up too much time. Another thing, if you have a really old computer, it's worth mentioning that the newer versions of OBS are pretty robust, and they take a lot of computer power. You don't need a brand new top of the line computer to run it, but if you have a computer that sometimes it takes you 3 to 4 minutes to click on your email and for it to actually load and open up, OBS might not be the right thing for you. Eventually you'll need a new computer anyways, but if you have a very old computer that is having a hard time running very simple things, then I'd recommend staying away from OBS. And I'm sure Zoom probably doesn't work very good for you in that instance anyways. Let's see. Also, the other benefit is that Zoom is pretty much practically a new universal language for everybody, right? Everybody knows the in and outs of it. It's mostly my great-grandmother can get on it no problem by clicking a link. It's pretty simple. So the ease of use for people and the interactivity is really huge. Another thing, if you work with a lot of pre-recorded video, like for example, if you are running a festival and some of the acts are pre-recorded or all the acts are pre-recorded, you can't really do all that stuff in have multiple videos lined up in StreamYard and Restream Studio. There's limits on how much live video you can upload, and also you can't do cool things like this, for example, where you can have a live video playing up over you and talk to it and talk about it, and then nicely, like if it was a newscast, and then nicely transition to the full video.
Dan, are you
just an example? And then yes, so with that, am I going too fast or something?
No, you don't. No, I'm sorry. You can see me laughing. I know. I'm sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt,
okay.
but
It's a very small thumbnail on the top, but I keep an eye on it. So
no, it freaked me out because I was in another screen and suddenly I heard voices, so I didn't see what you were doing.
Okay.
freaked me out. Never mind. Okay, back
Okay,
as you
cool.
were.
All right, so um, if you watch the last tech talk I did, where we talked about how to connect OBS and Zoom with other programs using a technology called NDI, I recently remade that video. You know, some people told me that certain parts of it weren't very clear, so I recently remade that video. There is instructions that I made, an instructional Word document and PDF that Annie will paste into the chat for you in a moment. And I've got a series of links. So you can go watch this. I don't want to take up this whole tech talk doing pretty much the same thing we did last time, but I will put the video, put the YouTube video link. I just fixed it up and re-uploaded it today for everybody. So afterwards, you can go check it out, and it'll show you step by step how to set up NDI and OBS, which means you can use OBS to talk to StreamYard, Restream Studio, Zoom, any other program. Anything you can select a microphone and a camera in, you'll be able to use OBS basically as your source. And then, yeah, so there's bullet pointed instructions with all the links in it, which should make it super easy. You really just got to click on the links and follow the video. And then I wanted to show you just to kind of go further a little bit on the post-production capabilities that we discussed last time. So like I said, I made this transparent logo in Photoshop is what I use, Photoshop or Adobe products. So you can do that, but if you don't have any of those programs, don't know how to use them, you can make very simple overlays in OBS without needing another program. So I'm going to show you how to do that, much like this scrolling text at the bottom. So let me show you how to do that real quick. Get my share screen set up. Wrong screen. And... All right, can everybody see that okay? All right. So if you want to add scrolling text, for example, so first off, let's I'm gonna make a new scene. Okay, so here's the scene section, here's the sources. I'm not gonna go too much into the basics because there's been many videos that have talked about that, but to add a new scene, this is basically, I use scenes as so I can one click between here's just me, here's me with a logo, here's me with an overlay, here's me with scrolling text, just to, so in the middle of a show, all I have to do is click on one thing to switch between them, right? So what I do is I have my camera set up on me, and then I will copy that scene or duplicate it, right click on it, duplicate to make a new scene, and then I'll call that me logo, and I add the logo to it. And then I will duplicate the video scene 2 again and name it me overlay, and I just add the overlay to it. That way the video's in the same spot, all the presets I have for it are the same, and it keeps things simple. So let me go ahead and delete this text source so I can show you how to make one. So if you want to add text in OBS, you go down to this source window here. Here, wait, is this a little better? Hopefully. Okay, cool. So go down to this source button. To add a source, you hit the plus sign at the bottom of the source window. And you can't see these. That's dumb. All right, there we go. So you can see audio input capture is to add a microphone. Video input capture is to add a video camera, like a webcam that you have. But to add text, you just go to the text box. Click on text. Let me resize this so it's a little easier for you to see. And now I'll say tip jar. It's important in OBS to label things when you create new stuff. It's important to label very clearly because otherwise, once it's done, it's really hard to know what's going on. So here you can select different fonts. You can also check this and upload text from a file. If you have like a big script written for an intro and you're doing the whole Star Wars, scroll up thing, you could just select that text file and it'll automatically load it into OBS. But for the purposes of today, we're just doing a quick tip jar announcement. So I'll just type in to make a donation, go to blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then as always, links are in the chat. And we're all just going to pretend like I can type. And now you can go down here change the color of the text, pick whatever color you want. You can add a background, select whatever color you want for the background. So let's say right now the background opacity is set to 0, so you can't see it. If I go to 100, now you can see a big black bar. If I go to 80% or 50%, it's at half transparency, which means you'll be able to see through that background, but not the text. And then now that that's done, I'm going to just click on this OK button down in the bottom corner. So now we've got to figure out how to format it and make it scroll correctly. So I'm going to move it down here to the bottom. And it's a little big, so you see this red bounding box. Here, let me resize. See this red bounding box here? I'm going to click on the corners or the sides so I can resize it a little bit. And then I can click and drag it. Or if I go to the very center, it'll resize it a little bigger or a little faster. All right, and then I'm just going to set it up so the first part of the word is right here on the bottom left corner. Now, in order to add the scrolling, so I've got my tip jar text selected in sources, and then you can just go up here to filters, click on filters. In the filters window at the bottom left-hand side, to add anything in Zoom, there's always a plus sign button, or in OBS, I mean. So if I click on this plus sign button, and you can't see the pop-up, click on the plus sign button, I can select scrolling. Pretty simple, right? So I select scroll, and now I can select a horizontal speed, make it go really fast. I could probably add another scroll to it to make it go double time, or you could do a vertical scroll if you've got something you want to scroll vertically, right? That's how that would work. Obviously, that's not what we want for this because nobody can read it. And then you want to, it defaults on having loop selected, but you want to, it should default on having a loop selected down here, but you want to make sure that that's selected. And then I hit close. And there you go. You've got, looks like I've got a little bit of the vertical on. So here, let me reset that to 0. There we go. So there you go. Now it's just scrolling across. I could slow it down maybe a little bit so it's easy to read, but there you go. You got a transparent overlay. Super easy. Now, if you wanted to do something like just a name overlay, like kind of what I've got right here. Now, this isn't something you could create in OBS because of this little corner right here, right? I could do a rectangle in OBS, but doing specific parts that are transparent isn't something you can do in OBS. So let me show you how to make a very simple name overlay. All right, so I can go to plus and in sources, go to plus in sources, and you can just select a color source, right? So this will basically give me a rectangle that I can color however I want, resize however I want. And let's call it overlay background. And let's select black. Hit OK. Hit OK. All right, so now I've got this big black rectangle. Let me resize it. So everything works in OBS. If you try to resize something, it'll keep it scaled where it scales down instead of just being moving down or sideways. It'll keep the same ratio. But if you on a Mac, you hit the command button, or on a PC, you hit the control button, and then when you click, or is it Alt? Yeah. Yeah, it's Alt. If you hit the Alt button on a PC, you can resize it like this. So let's bring this down to the bottom corner. And keep that right there. Again, this isn't going to be super fancy, but just to give you an idea of what's possible. And then let's go to filters. To make it transparent, I'm going to add a color correction. Hit OK. And now here I can just drop the opacity down to 50%. I can also change the color of the backdrop if I want to. We could make it purple. We can make it whatever color we want. We'll just keep it black. Hit close. So there's that. And now to add the text, I'll just go back into sources, hit the plus sign down here, select text, and I will label it name so that it's very easy to tell after the fact what it is. And let me just type in my name here. And we don't need a background, so that's good that that's, you know, already. Or you could, I mean, you could do the same thing here if you just did the text with the background opacity. This would be a simpler way to do it, but you can't really control the size of the backdrop. So there's a little bit less customization there, but it would be kind of a simpler way to achieve the same thing. So let's just bring that down, hit OK. And I could just resize that over. That way you have more control. You could change the text much easier. You can resize this a little bit. And there you go. There's a simple, I could change the colors. I could bring this over here and add a different rectangle color right here, similar to how the overlays are in Restream or StreamYard. You know, have a little red box here, and then the rest is just a black transparency. So you can do very similar things to what you can accomplish, and it's very simple, and I don't need an extra program to do this. It's all just in one, you know, all just in one space, which is kind of cool. So that's a very simple way to add an overlay. And then let's get rid of that. So I want to show you guys some quick little tricks. So here I've got my video. All I did to add my video is I went to the plus sign, went to video capture. Went to the video capture button, and then I named it, you know, I can name it my video camera, and then I select the video I want to choose right here. But I've already got it up there. That's why it's doing weird stuff. So that's how you add the video camera. And now to do some kind of cool stuff, you can highlight the camera in the sources window and go to filters. And here you can see I've got a color correction on it. So if I take that off, you see it, mostly it's just a little bit of saturation adjustment, right? So here I can adjust the saturation way too much. I can make it black and white. You can make it a little black and white. You could add a sepia color to it and adjust the opacity. You know, you'd have to play around with it, you know, stuff a lot. And then let's just go back to defaults. You can mess with the hue shift and do kind of a Hulk kind of thing going on here. Increase the, you know, you could do a lot of weird stuff, right? But small adjustments is all you really need to kind of dial it in. Like often when I turn on this camera, it's a little bit too white. So I usually will bring the brightness down a little bit, and I will increase the saturation just a touch, just to, you know, it's not small adjustments, but you know, this is an easy way to adjust your camera. Similarly, if you want to adjust your microphone filters, you can add filters over your microphone as well. So let's add my microphone. Select my microphone here. All right. So, okay. So if I select and highlight my microphone and then go to filters, obviously for a musician, you probably don't want to do this, but for a venue, if you're just somebody who's talking or, you know, introducing somebody, you might want to add let me resize this. You might want to add a noise suppression. And the noise suppression on Zoom is pretty good. Obviously, for a musician, this isn't something you want to do. This RNN noise, higher quality, is a much better version of it. And then you can make different adjustments on it. You can also add, let me show you all the filters. You can do noise gate, limiter, expander, you know, compressor, whatever you want. So you can, any source you put in OBS, you can do a lot in filters to fine, tweak, and adjust. So I think that's kind of enough with that type of stuff. Let's see. Oh, last time, one thing I talked about, you guys might have seen, for a venue, this might be good for you if you're somebody who's doing sort of a job like me where you're kind of just like switchboarding stuff and adding post-production. There's this little button in the bottom corner called Studio Mode. All right, so if you click on Studio Mode, you will see this happen. So most of you will probably open it up and you just see one video right here. If you go to Studio Mode, there's two. So what this means is there is a preview monitor and a program monitor. What that means is this is what people see, right? If I'm trying to get my next scene ready, like if, for example, when I do Greenwich Village Folk Festival, there's a lot of artists. They all have their own lower third with their own name. Maybe there's a tip jar lower third that I'm putting up occasionally. So I know what the next thing is going to be up, right? So I will get it ready, select it. So I know, all right, when I hit transition or when I double click on the scene, so you're going to see right here, this is what I've got ready on deck, but this is what everybody sees. You can't see this in Zoom or in anywhere else until I either double click on it, until I hit the transition button. Just select the scene.
Hey, dude, wait, Brandon. Every time you switch scenes, we can't hear you. There's no mic enabled or something in the other scene.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Sorry about that. So where did it cut off?
It wasn't a big deal. I don't think that we missed.
Okay.
You were just kind of talking about
cool.
switching scenes, and yeah.
All right. So yeah. So it functions the same as just clicking. Oh, that's why, because of this microphone here. Okay. So it functions the same as just selecting a scene when you're just in the regular program monitor. There we go. Okay. But for me, if I accidentally click on something in the middle of a broadcast and put up the wrong name over somebody, that's not good, right? Not a good look. So for me, I keep it in studio mode, get the next thing ready, and then when it's time for that to come up, I have to double click on it. It's a little harder to make a mistake there, just so to let you know why I do it that way and kind of to show you the options. But to keep things simple for most of you, keep it in this single studio mode. And then also, we touched on it a little bit, but adding stuff in OBS is really just as easy as open up the file on your computer, drag and drop it into the source. That's what I did with this. That's what I did with this video here. I just dragged and dropped it, and it came in full size. I just resized it a little bit. Bring it over here. Let me turn the sound down on it so you can hear me a little more clearly. Another cool thing about OBS, I'll just touch on this for just a second, is that you can nest scenes as well. So if I make this me scene, which has my microphone and my camera in it, and I want to, I can nest that scene of me with my camera and my audio into any other scene so that any changes I make to my initial camera or audio, if I put a filter on it, it changes all those other scenes without me having to remember, oh yeah, I put this filter on, I have to go change it in these 3 places, remember the numbers of how much I changed them. So in order to nest a scene, this will be one of the last things I show you, is just say I want to nest this video background scene. So I'll select the scene I want to put it into. I go down to my plus button on sources and go down here. This is annoying. All right, and then go down to the scene. I can add one of these already made scenes as a source. And I just select the one that I've already got here. So let's do the video background and hit OK. And there it is. Now it's in this scene. And any changes I make to the original scene will automatically happen over here. And let's get rid of that now. So yeah. So we went over those things, text transparency, scrolling. I think that's pretty much it as far as the things I wanted to go over to further the post-production conversation. I think now we can kind of just get into, let me stop screen sharing actually. Now, hang on a second. All the things I was doing, I broke something.
Yeah. We lost you, Brandon.
Here we go.
It's a blank screen. We need your face back.
Yeah, working on it. Hang on.
Nice.
Here we go.
No, not yet.
There we go.
There you are.
You can hear me now too?
Yep.
Okay. Could you always hear me before, even though the video was off? Okay.
I hear you. Yep.
Internet's full of gremlins. So with that, I think we can probably just get to any questions anybody might have.
Cool.
And go from there.
Oh, we have questions.
Good. Good.
Good questions. Okay, so first of all, I want to be very clear to everybody. We are recording this, and this video will be archived. If you missed the original tech talk that Brandon gave, I did post a link to that, as well as a tech talk that we gave on OBS a while back. The wonderful Savannah from the Accidentals gave a great OBS tech talk. So if this is your first time hearing about OBS, all of this might be completely crazy. I strongly recommend go back, watch the OBS tech talk. It will, a lot of this will make much more sense. And then also watch Brandon's previous, maybe Zoom as well. Although there's a lot of new Zoom stuff, isn't there?
Yeah.
And let's see. So we're going to start with what I think will be a very easy
Oh,
question.
hang on one second, Annie. I saw, I think this was something probably everybody's wondering. I saw one that was messaged just to me. From Jacob. When you're using, when I was screen sharing, I'm sure my audio was out of sync, and Jacob told me as much. When you're using OBS into Zoom and you're screen sharing OBS, it's creating a weird delay. That's why, my audio should be in sync now, right? It's just when I was doing the screen share, that causes issues where the video will be out of sync with the audio. So that's not something most of you are ever that's a very specific thing that only I will ever need to do. So,
and I actually think that Savannah talked about, if you do have sync issues, there is a way to fix it in OBS. You just
absolutely there is, and I can show you guys that after we get to a few questions if people want to know.
Awesome. Okay, so the first thing I want to revisit is, you mentioned, and something we talked about this last time, is like somebody was asking the benefit of OBS versus something like StreamYard or Restream. And I think we talked about a couple of things. The number one being that OBS is free, and
yes. That's a big one for me.
I can think of a handful of things, but let's hear from you.
So obviously free's good, but customization, especially for me, I work with a lot of clients. I'm not doing this for like my own live stream, right? But I can make a very differently produced show for many different people using the same techniques. I could take those overlays I just showed you how to make in OBS and just copy the scene and change the color and change the name. Like there's a lot of simple customization. And, other than my logo and the extra fancy name overlay I put on the bottom, all that stuff can be done in OBS. You can't do that in Restream Studio or StreamYard. You have to have another program that you know how to use to edit and create those logos and create those overlays, things like that. Also, like I talked about, if you're sharing video at all, you're very limited on the quality and size and how much you can do video with in StreamYard and Restream Studio. You can share anything you want in OBS. You're not limited to the size of it at all. I do live stream. I've done John Gorka, for example. I've restreamed a whole pre-recorded concert from, back before the pandemic many times, in really high quality with great audio. And the ability to also, I can patch in live stuff. If we're doing a live introduction on Zoom from the venue and John, I can patch that in. If John wants to add a live song after, I can it's very, very simple. Also, realistically, this isn't something we should ever have to do, and I pray nobody ever asks me to figure it out. But if I had, Annie and Rod and a couple of people on Restream, say if we were doing a folk festival, for example, I've got Annie, Rod, and a couple of musicians on Restream. I've got a couple of other musicians on Zoom because they don't know how to use Restream, or vice versa. And I've got, somebody, one or two people on StreamYard. I could just use them as different rooms and stream it all out of OBS and just switch between, all right, let's show StreamYard now and take that audio. Let's show Restream. Let's show Zoom, so you really, and we've only touched on like the very tip of the iceberg with OBS. There's 1,000 ways to customize it. There's a million different plugins to do anything. You can do custom transitions. I mean, you're very limited with what you can do with those other programs, and there are no limits to what you can do with OBS if you take the time to learn it. Yeah. And that's why, for me, it's the clear choice.
Nice. I love it. Good sales pitch there, buddy.
Right.
It doesn't cost anything.
Too bad it's not paid, and I can't be like a sponsor for it or something. They can't sponsor me, but what are you gonna do? Maybe I'm backing the wrong horse. I don't know.
Oh, it's good. I think it's great. Okay, so this is hopefully a fairly simple question. Michael is asking, OBS seems not to be supported by Windows 7. Do you know if that's accurate? Or
Uh, I would say make sure what version you're downloading. There's a place on the OBS project website. I'll see if I can find it in a second. Put it in the chat where they show you what version of OBS is compatible with what version of Mac and Windows. So the newest version of OBS, that might be the case. It might not be compatible with Windows 7, but OBS is made for. It was made by people using Windows. And for any version of Windows you have, there's a version of OBS that works with it. You might just have to download an older version. I'll see if I can find the page I'm talking about that shows those requirements and paste it in the chat.
yeah. Okay, good. So since you brought up OBS update, and you and I talked about this beforehand, can
Oh,
you
yeah.
talk about how to update your OBS because it doesn't do it automatically?
Yes, OBS and Zoom probably don't update automatically for you. There's ways to turn on settings. I know at least in a PC, my OBS lets me know, hey, it doesn't do an automatic update, but it says, hey, there's an update for OBS. Would you like to update? But that doesn't happen on my Mac. I don't know if I changed a setting when I first turned on set up my PC. But I would recommend everybody check very regularly for programs like Zoom and OBS if you use them. I would say check at least once a month to make sure that you're up to date on the newest version. There's a disclaimer for that though. Particularly, the only ones, for instance, I found where it was an issue for a client of mine to upgrade to the newest OBS is because he uses a Blackmagic device, and there's a Blackmagic plugin that make using a Blackmagic device work really well with OBS, but they didn't update the plugin that works with the newer version of OBS. So when we upgraded his OBS, all of a sudden the Blackmagic couldn't connect, and we had to kind of I went and downloaded an older version of OBS, which was very easy to do, and got him set back up on the old version. And I haven't checked back to see if they've updated that Blackmagic plugin that makes Blackmagic work with OBS. They probably have, because the day they made that update, I checked the forum and there was like 20 people within a day that were like, Blackmagic doesn't work with it. Blackmagic doesn't work with it. So I'm sure they fixed it by now, but so it's not a bad idea if you have a weird setup that's not as easy as I plug in my camera and I plug in my microphone. If you have a video camera, a Blackmagic, and you're using a mixer and all, if it's a really complicated setup, then you might want to look into what changes are made on the new update and maybe wait a month for something like OBS, but Zoom, you should just always upgrade to the newest one because they're always making the sound a little bit better, especially for music.
And security.
Yeah, and actually here I'll paste the links. Here's where you go to download the newest version of Zoom and OBS.
Cool. While you're doing that, I'm gonna go. Okay, can you mirror video in OBS? That's one thing I noticed that like in Zoom and others, but in OBS we're flipped. We're not mirrored.
You can, yeah, you can mirror your video. If you, there's a filter. Let me find what it's called.
This is going to be more about OBS than Zoom, I detect, based on the questions.
Yes. I'm not sure which one it is off the top of my head. Maybe it's
okay.
Yeah, there is one of the filters you can use to flip and mirror, but also if you're going from OBS into Zoom, you can just hit the mirror button on Zoom as well.
Yeah, so
in the Zoom settings.
Right, you'll be watching yourself in Zoom, like if you're going to watch yourself and you want to see it mirrored. Yeah. So, and I do want a clarification. Early on when you were talking about the noise suppression plugin for the mic and whatnot, Patricia was asking. We want to be very clear that that is not for musicians. If you're a musician, do not do that.
Yes, that's just for I use it on my mic because I'm mostly introducing a show or introducing an artist, and I type a lot and it's very loud. So I always try to keep all the suppression on. That way only my voice comes through. And if you're a musician, you don't want to put that noise suppression on because that's what we break when we make music work on Zoom is we get rid of the suppression. So if you have suppression on, your instruments are going to sound wobbly because it's thinking it's like a background noise that it's trying to get rid of.
Yep. I am going to skip over a question about audio that came through because it might be, we'll wait and see if we have time. Um, uh, Dennis is asking, how do you get performers' live performances into OBS? I mean, are you streaming them? So, and this might go hand in hand with Patricia's, but we've talked about this. You're getting this video on your hard drive, or you're streaming it out of YouTube. And is there a better?
Okay, yeah. So for sharing video, I could share a video into Zoom on YouTube because I have a very, 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 very robust internet connection. But I always recommend, and I still, even for me, I do it because if there's any lull in anything, the audio will get out of sync, the quality will go down. So me personally, if I'm sharing a video on anything in any stream, I have it downloaded to my hard drive because I'm putting less strain. You never want to be, if you're sharing, if I were to share a video from YouTube right now, I'm streaming it to myself and out at the same time to you guys. So that's just anything like that. You're just asking for trouble. You want to try to keep things simple, especially if you don't have a very good internet connection. You just want to focus on sending out the right stuff and not trying to make sure that you're also getting things as you're trying to send them out. It's kind of a bad recipe.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to clarify once again, I think Patricia was thinking that there was people talking, but that was the video example that you were embedding. So nobody, you are not able to unmute yourselves, people, in case you've wondered. Brant, I see your hand up, but I'm going to get through. There's a lot of questions, and I just want to make sure we get through these, and then we'll bring up. Kiara was talking about remote controlling someone else's OBS output.
There's many ways to remote control other computers, and you don't necessarily need a special function of OBS to do it. On a Mac, there's a built-in hardware, or there's a built-in thing into the software where you can give another Mac user a permission to take over your computer. You can do it right on Zoom, actually. You can, in your settings in Zoom, there's a way to, I'm trying to remember the wording of it. There's a setting you can turn on that's request remote access or remote support. And then if I have it on and Annie has it on, then if she needs help with something, she can share her desktop. I can ask for permission to control her computer. And as long as she isn't moving her mic or her mouse or typing, I can control her mouse right on my screen and adjust her settings. This is something when I have a big show where I've got a lot of artists, this is my favorite new thing to do, because sometimes talking a bunch of people through how to set the sound up right in Zoom is a little complicated. And it just wastes a lot of time. So if I can just say, hey, just click yes real quick and let me go through your settings, make sure this is right, this is right, this is right. Okay, cool, let's go. You can't do that in the middle of a show through Zoom, because then that's what everybody would see. They'd be seeing the desktop. But there's other programs. There's many computer programs that computer to computer connection where you can let somebody control your computer. Me and Don have been talking about playing around with this so that in the middle of a show, I could just, if something sounds off, I can just go through real quick and yep, it got the original sound is correct. Or let me just boost his audio a little bit, things like that. Mm-hmm. So you can do that with any program, because there's native programs that let you do it with somebody's whole computer.
Yeah. Kiara, I'm not 100% sure that was what you were looking for, although that is what I would have interpreted, but I'm just going to guess that if that wasn't like, throw in the chat again. She's asking, I'm just going in order that come in. She's asking about green screen to get a realistic background, or is there another method that OBS offers? Like, do you need to use green screen still? And that's yes.
No, and yes. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Green screen is the best way to get the cleanest cut image. You can use basically a green screen functionality in Zoom with the virtual background. Everybody's familiar with that. If you don't have a green screen behind you and you use something like a virtual background, the edges aren't going to be very clear. Like my hair will probably, like all this stuff where you can kind of see the background, will probably fade out. The edges, it's not going to look very good. And there might even be like part of my shirt might if it's the same color as what's actually in the background, might kind of be cut out. But in OBS, you can use a filter on your video called a chroma key, and I'll type that in the chat, a chroma key, and you can select any color to block out of the background. Like I could select the color of these, the soundproofing tiles behind me and block those out. Obviously, I have a lot of stuff going on in my background, so that wouldn't be a very good system for me. If I had a green screen, I could select green, or even a blue screen, I could select blue, and it'll block out all of that color. And it makes it pretty simple.
Yeah. Charlie Mossbrook did a demo of green screen. Boy, I love that we have all these questions that we can just point people to past tech talks.
Yeah, that's good.
Farm Board President. Okay. I'm moving on to Chuck's question right now. This is a different question than he asked earlier, but I think we answered that. You are not able to link, you can't hyperlink text and graphics and whatnot in OBS any more than you can in a StreamYard or Restream right now. So
no, and
right.
Yeah, you can't do that. At least not through any function that I currently know of, because you're sending what you're sending on a live stream is you're sending video. You know, you're sending, doesn't matter what I put on the screen. It's just it's compressing those colored pixels and sending them out in the way that I organize it. I could put a link on the screen that people can see, but they can't click on it because they're just clicking on the video. There might be a functionality to do that, but I doubt it would be a very niche thing. If you could figure out how to work it, it would probably only work in certain circumstances. Like, guarantee you Facebook would not allow that. I don't, like you can do it on YouTube where you can add cards. If you have a YouTube page where you've achieved monetization, you can add a little card or a link at the bottom that is clickable. That's something you do within YouTube only. But to my knowledge, there's no way to do it on Facebook, and you can't do it from OBS to be on all of your external sources.
Okay. I'm going to quick interject here. It is 2:53. There are 23 new messages in my chat, which doesn't mean there's 23 questions. So I'm going to ask you guys to don't put anything else in the chat unless it's an actual question. And if it's just a question for me, I'll get to it. I have skipped over a couple of these, but I'm assuming... I shouldn't assume this question. Brandon, how's your time? You got like an extra 15 minutes?
I got till 3:30 if needed. So
okay. Well, we're hopefully gonna we try to stop at 3:15. And let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna get Chuck's original question, which I really love because you're gonna answer this. It is, if one uses Zoom as a backstage area for patrons, as we do with and you're streaming out to Facebook. And before you answer this, there's gonna be a two-parter because I have a part of it too.
Okay.
So that the applause would be captured, wouldn't incidental background noises from everybody's microphones interfere with or compete with my audio while I'm singing? Hold on. We know what the answer is. So wait before you answer that. My question, second part of that, I know it's killing you. The second part of that is when even, okay, no, you answer it and I'll ask my question after it.
Okay.
I just realized it was going to get complicated.
So doing it the way that I talked about, which I think is what Chuck's talking about, where you're capturing audio from Zoom, the answer is no, it will not compete with or interfere with your audio, because you could turn the sound coming out of Zoom down 10 dB lower than yours is an option, right? Or, I mean, still, even if I were doing that, I would still work with the audience. If they're your patrons, it's a very easy to, I don't want to put it this way, but there's no other way to put it, to train your audience, as most of I mean, that's maybe that's an inconsiderate way to put it, but I'm sure everybody understands what I mean. For most of those like patron communities that I work with, it's, after one or two concerts, it's very easy to train them to just say, hey, keep yourself muted until the end of a song, and then unmute for applause, and be kind and mute yourself again. They're there to hear you play. They don't want to interrupt things, right? So that works really well for most people. But still, even if you're worried about that, like for some artists, like Don White, for example, he does comedy in the middle of his thing, and it's important to him to have laughter in the middle of a story or at the right part of a song. So we keep people unmuted the whole time. It just, we have to basically train them and teach them the etiquette for how to behave in that circumstances. And then there's somebody like me there to mute somebody if they become a problem. But still, if you've got your sound is originating in OBS and you're capturing live studio audience sound from Zoom, just turn them down a little bit, or if you need to turn them down, you can do that. But you could still you can set it up so yours is clearly louder and prioritized no matter what's happening, so that there's a background of applause, but you can still be heard clearly. It won't work the same way as in Zoom, where when other people are clapping, your audio cuts out. Yep. So I hope that answered the question.
That's great. And so my question was a piggyback on that, because right now, if we go right from Zoom out to Facebook, YouTube, whatever, and somebody laughs in the middle, right? Did you pick, because you're going to have it on speaker view?
Yeah.
Their face pops up.
Yes.
Right? In the stream. Does OBS solve this problem?
Yes, it does. And also to somebody who might not know what Annie means by that, Zoom added a new functionality where you can spotlight multiple people. Mm-hmm. And this isn't a problem when you spotlight one person, Annie, only if you have more than one person spotlighted.
Right, exactly.
So if me and Annie were spotlighted both up on screen in Zoom, and then somebody sneezed who had their mic unmuted, their face would pop up on the stream. It's just a glitch in Zoom. And me and we actually talked about this yesterday at Don's forum. There's a weird little glitch that's been happening on the newest version of Zoom with the stream getting stuck in a gallery view on the stream. And I think there's a lot, I have a lot of guesses based on how these things work, but it's probably because there's multiple hosts and one of them switched to gallery view. That's not something that used to happen. Like a co-host switching to gallery view used to never change the view on the stream, but for some reason there's a glitch that's happening lately. So I just decided, well, I'm just going to start streaming from OBS, because that solves the problem, because I can just control, I can decide, I can control 100% what's on the screen. Nobody else's audio or nobody else's video will come through, even if I've got two spotlights and somebody sneezes and they show up on the speaker view. If that's not what I have, if I'm not choosing to have that out on the screen, it's not going to be there. So again, you have just far more control using OBS.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. I am Chuck. I think we sort of answered this question, but I'm gonna just keep going with it. It's images, videos, audio clips, other things that you're going to use. Do they need to reside on your desktop, other than the answer about the YouTube, which we've already just answered? But in general, if you're using an image, does it need to reside on your laptop, or can you point to a file from the internet? I'm guessing.
I would just, the answer is yes, you can do that. But if quality is a concern, which if you're sharing something on your show, I'm sure quality is a concern, it's best to have it on your computer, on your hard drive. For the same, I mean, a picture shouldn't be too much of a problem. Like if you pulled up a picture on a website, for example, or you could even, there's a way to add a web link as a source in OBS. I think it's probably just for sake of simplicity and things not going wrong in the middle of a show, it's best to just have the things you need where you want them, and then you can just directly plug them into OBS where you want them. And then there's no surprises like, oh, I have to refresh this URL link in Zoom in the middle of, or in OBS in the middle of my set so that they can see this picture. Where, if you have it on your computer and you just drag and drop it in OBS, there's zero chance of it going wrong.
Right. Oh, Chuck, you weren't talking about your desktop specifically. You're saying if it's in a folder or whatnot. Okay. All right. Well.
Oh yeah. If it's in a folder, it doesn't need to be on your desktop. If it's on your computer, that's all that matters.
This is really why you people should ask your own questions, but whatever. I'm fine reading them. It's all good. Brant Miller, I see you have a question in the chat, and if it's the same question, this is answered in Brandon's first video that he did. So if that's what you're asking, then we might want to move on from it. Just connecting OBS to Zoom, the basics of that is all covered in Brandon's first video that we link to in the chat, and it's also on our past videos. So did you have something in addition to that you wanted to ask? Okay, go ahead, unmute. You're up, bud.
Yeah, I remember watching that, and I remember there was just some questions about, something about not being able to have multiple performers on OBS through Is that only, does that apply to, where does that apply? You can't have multiple people performing when you're using OBS.
You can, I guess, I'm not sure I understand the question, but if, if, if for example, you're using it, like what are you talking about, using it with like Zoom, where you're going from Zoom to OBS, or?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to just to have people join, have multiple people on Zoom, and you're kind of hosting it on OBS. And so, and then let's say you also stream to Facebook, is that all fairly simple?
Yeah. So, and the answer is you can have, I think, actually, so having multiple people on screen at once, like what you can easily do with StreamYard and easily do with Restream Studio, you can still achieve with Zoom and OBS. And actually, Annie helped me figure out how to do this on a show, Yellow Room Gang show we did in December. You would just need to have, like, for me, if you have one desktop screen, it'll be hard for you to achieve it right. If you have multiple desktops, everything you want to do gets a lot easier. So for Greenwich Village, like this video that I showed, that was in Zoom, and I was streaming from OBS. I had 3 people up on screen at once, and I could easily switch between 3 people, whoever was spotlighted, and just a speaker view because I had them set up in different scenes. So in OBS, or I'm sorry, in Zoom, there's an option in your general settings checkbox you can click that says use dual monitors. And what that does is it opens up another small window of Zoom that whoever's talking or whoever's spotlighted is in. You can also pin a second person to that video. So for example, for Greenwich Village, I have whoever's spotlighted and talking now is in that second monitor. And then my main Zoom window, as you can see, like if I can spotlight, I can add a spotlight to you. And now everybody should be able to see just me and you on screen, right? So then I would have another window capture in OBS that just captures these 2 windows. That way I could toggle back and forth, and whoever's spotlighted, I can go ahead and switch to just those 3 people, just those 2, 4, 5, 6, or gallery view. Because all I'm doing is capturing the Zoom window. So whatever I put on Zoom window, whether it's speaker or gallery view, is what people see. Does that?
So I guess if I go back and replay the original one, that will tell a lot of the linking things together. And
yeah, I know it's a lot, Brant. I had to watch it 3 times.
It's hard to verbally explain how to do a lot of these things too.
Yeah,
sometimes
right.
I struggle with it, but yeah, I hope that helps.
Yes. Okay. I'm bouncing around now because I think I've gone through. I think I scared everybody off of adding anything else to the chat, so that's good. Thank you. Let's just Mike asked a question that's kind of outside the scope, but I think it's fairly easy to answer and might be curious to other people. And he's asking if most folks are using a dedicated camera versus an iPhone as a camera, or the laptop computer camera. And we've done multiple tech talks on camera kind of things in video, but
I could kind of bullet point.
That would be just go ahead.
So the best camera you could ever get is on your iPhone. Everybody knows that, and that's great and all. But it isn't always an easy thing to use. And there's a lot of ways of using your webcam, of using your phone as a webcam. And while it's a good quality image, you usually have to involve several other programs to get it to work right. Mm-hmm. I myself, my favorite one that I've used is there's an NDI virtual camera. It's an expensive one. It's $20 for the app. Works really, really good until your phone overheats, I discovered. I only used it myself, but after about an hour and a half, I think, of doing Don's forum, all of a sudden the video started going out of sync because my audio wasn't also coming from the camera. My audio was going direct to my computer, and my camera was going through another program into the computer. So the best camera you can get is an iPhone. If you have one, you can make it work. But you can get a really good webcam that has a USB plug, requires no extra programs or apps to use for $50, $60. I mean, if you If you want to get a really good camera and you've got a little bit more budget, you know, you could spend a little more money on it. But as far as streaming online goes, simple is always best because there's less things that can go wrong.
That is true. And I am going to just point to Jacob Breitbart. Sorry, Jacob. I'm sure that's close. He's adding things that are not questions in the chat about using DSLR to OBS with external audio source and Scarlett. We have done this in the OBS. There's multiple different versions of covering that. This is a little outside the scope of what we're doing here, but that's just a different kind of setup, whereas I'm using a Scarlett audio interface, right, with a microphone and a DSLR Canon Rebel camera. You'll see Charlie. Can you see what's going on with Charlie right now?
Yeah, I see that all the time.
And in the same thing, but that's, so Charlie's using the same thing. These are, it's another plugin because this is a camera, a point shoot camera that also has video option. And it's a fairly recent model, even some of my older ones. There is software now that lets you webcam enable certain mirrorless, you know, DSLR cameras, right? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump on this with Brandon, but the same issues that I had with my iPhone, such as Epoch Cam, where my iPhone would suddenly just disconnect midstream.
Yeah.
Are the reasons I don't use my iPhone. And this has been more reliable for me, but I already had the camera.
Yeah.
If I didn't already have it, it's a $600 outlay. So just, you know, financially speaking.
Yeah,
so,
that's the camera I have right here is a $50 camera.
Mm-hmm.
It's a USB plug.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good camera. It's only 30 frames per second, which is all you can do on most live streams anyways. So it meets the minimum requirements, and as far as resolution, it's actually better than the minimum requirements, but it's $50. You know, I've gone through a lot of trouble with people trying to get their phone to work, and you can get it to work. It is a nice camera, but the headaches and all, you know, you have to buy this app and you have to set it up in this way, and if anything goes wrong with it,
Mm-hmm.
it's right in the middle of your show, of course. So, you know, for me, I would, regardless of what equipment I had, I would spend $50 and know it's just going to work every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's plugins for those.
Yeah. And then a very good, Charlie just said in the chat, lighting, you know, this is not good lighting in this room. And I, you know, I don't usually appear on camera. I'm normally the voice of God behind the scenes, so I don't really care. But for performers and people who are on screen a lot, lighting is the most important thing with a camera. You could have an okay camera, but the right kind of lighting and look much better than me right now. So
okay, move it. All right, yeah, love it. Could Brandon talk more? Ben, this is Ben asking. Could Brandon talk more about using OBS to mix and change audio level from remote performers?
Yes. So I'm going to assume you're talking about like capturing audio from a program like Zoom, where you're going Zoom to OBS or Restream to OBS or whatever, like that. Like here, let me share my desktop real quick. I hate sharing my desktop.
I know, but I'm hoping this, I know, careful what you have on there, right?
Right.
I think this might be answering Kiara's question too a little bit.
All right.
She's trying to remotely run shows.
Okay.
So
let's focus on this little audio mixer down here.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you see Annie talk, you see this desktop audio go up.
Hello.
Right. So if I'm the performer, and my mic's running a little hot right now because I'm actually talking directly into it when I normally don't. I have my audio, you know, let's say this is right where I want it. And then go ahead, Annie, talk a little bit.
Oh God, I don't want to really.
Oh, let me just turn her down a little bit. Nice and easy. You can get more specific with it. You can, yeah, right. You can get more specific with it by clicking on this little gear down here next to any of the audio sources. Click on the gear. Here, let me resize this. Click on the gear, go to Advanced Audio Properties, and that's where you'll see this little box pop up. Here here's a window that has all of my audio sources, and I can change whether they're monitoring or their output or both, right? So if I want to hear something and I don't want to send it out, or vice versa, here you can add a delay. sync offset. You can add a 1, 2, 3 millisecond delay to whichever specific audio source, or if you want to just boost it instead of using this slider bar here, which isn't very precise. And you say like, that's why I always, when I'm running a show, I always have this advanced audio properties thing up. I can just type in, let me just boost it 4 dB, done. You know, and it keeps it pretty simple. So I think that covers it.
Hang on before you close this. So are you saying so essentially everybody who's unmuted in this Zoom call is going to be showing up in the desktop audio? So
yes,
as you're swapping out performers or whatever, like if I get really loud, 1%. So you've got to be on it.
So for example, like for Greenwich Village Folk Festival, I'm capturing the audio in this same desktop audio. That's where it's all going to be routed to. And if you have it, like we've talked about in the past, if you have a program or use a program like, you know, Soundflower, Loopback, you know, where you could really control, like I could have a desktop audio source for if I had, say, a group of musicians in Restream, or a different desktop audio source for a group of musicians in Zoom. I could control them more specifically, but if they're all on the same program, the audio is coming through the same place. So I can't say for Annie, I want it here, and for this musician, I have it here. It's during the sound check. If it's not really worth going through and trying to get a musician to boost it just a little bit, because we keep getting overdrive. So just bring it back to where it was, and I'll just make a note. All right, when this artist is up, I'm going to boost it 0.5 dB. And so when it's that artist's turn, I just click on here and type in 0.5. And boom, it's, you know, it's done. So if I've got a show like Greenwich Village Folk Festival where I've got many artists, and usually the idea is if there's not too many issues with sound check, you should have them all in the same place, because as I'm sound checking them, I'm going to be going off this, going, all right, most of the musicians are kind of peaking right here, maybe a little bit higher. And this musician, when they're talking, they're only down here. You know, I'll get them to boost their audio so that it kind of comes to the same place. But if somebody is just a lot quieter, or sometimes sound checks go great, and then during the performance, something goes wrong. It happens all the time, right? If somebody's a lot quieter, then I'll just, when they're up, I'll just boost them. And then I stay on top of it. When we go to the next person, I switch back to 0.
Got it. All right, cool. We have got to wrap up here. I am, okay. As a musician, any reason not to use the limiter if you dialed in the audio but still worry about distortion overdriving input?
Can you repeat that?
Do I have to? Sorry.
Yes.
As a musician, any reason not to use the limiter if you dialed in the audio but still worry about distortion overdriving input? Is the limiter, is there a filter? Is that what
there is a limiter filter? Yes. I never use it. I personally, I never touch the audio on any of the musicians I work with, because, you know, that's their job, is they have.
Oh shit! Sorry.
That was weird.
I was trying to mute myself, and I just said it again. You guys, I'm so sorry.
And I just unplugged my headphones, so now I can't hear you. All right. Yeah, I never mess with any of the audio settings on any of my musicians. That's like sacrilegious. I feel like, you know, that's not my job. My job is to help them get it right on their end. And if there's a volume discrepancy, I'll absolutely boost it to make sure they're where they need to be. If they're too loud and overdriving, there really isn't anything, you know, you can bring it down, but that's not going to improve the audio quality. If they're peaking, bringing the volume down you all probably know, isn't going to solve the problem. It's still going to sound a little distorted. It's just going to be a little quieter and distorted. So it's best if you're switchboarding somebody, it's better to have them too quiet, because you can just adjust it in OBS, than have them edging close to being too loud and distorting.
Gotcha. Okay, Kiara, I see your question, and I was trying to figure out how to phrase it, and knowing full well that this is not going to be a quick answer, I'm going to suggest a private one-on-one session with Brandon to follow up on this, because it's going to be I think it's going to go back to Brandon's first talk, which is a little complex, but managing a performance on OBS. So like, I'm assuming you're talking about you using OBS like what Brandon's doing remotely to run, but Brandon is the Zoom, your Zoom that's happening. Like uh, when you're
You mean
doing
my
a
Zoom
show with
account?
Don, it's your Zoom account or whatever. But
It,
you're
it
running it all on your own computer. It's not like the Zoom is happening remotely and
yeah.
it's all you. You're doing it,
Yes. And I'm in the Zoom meeting.
and
And
they're
that's how I
joining.
capture the audio and stuff. And that's how I spotlight the right person, and things like that. So if you're controlling a Zoom meeting and an OBS meeting,
Yeah.
or and OBS, you still have to spotlight the right person at the right time in Zoom. So you're kind of controlling both programs. So how you have it set up and making sure you're organized with your scenes, so that way all right, I spotlight this person and then I switch on this lower third and yada yada yada. But yeah, I'm in the Zoom meeting on my computer. Otherwise, I could access it through very complicated means I'm not even going to mention. But the simplest answer is if I'm in the Zoom meeting, it's very easy for me to grab the video and audio out of it and bring it into OBS.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, guys, I have 1,000 more questions, and so Brandon's going to hide from me soon. But I do think we need to wrap up. I think this is a lot of amazing information, and I recommend going back and watching this again. Yes, it is being recorded, and yes, we will be posting this out to our Farm Virtual Connections website, which now it just all lives at farmfolk.org, and then there's a special page link. Anyway, who knows? Maybe we'll have a follow up on using OBS with Restream without Zoom. And can I assume that is a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I just reposted all those links. So
Yep.
if you watch that YouTube video that explains how to set up the NDI so you can make all these programs talk very easily,
Awesome.
you can have something start in OBS. Like if you're a musician, got my sound right, my video perfect right there. I've got my overlays, my logos, my tip jar stuff. If I have to go into Zoom, all I do is use NDI to send that message from OBS to Zoom. If I'm going to Restream, same thing. Just send that message to Restream by selecting the NDI as your video and audio in that program. And I updated that video on YouTube. I made it a lot more clear, and I also have the links right at the bottom. So in the description, you can just click the link to download the program instead of hunting for it on a website. And I made some written instructions on Word and in a PDF document. And there's also my email.
Did you answer? Oh, you are going to so regret that. There is also, sorry, there is also, so if I, for example, am joining a show such as Don's or whatever, and I want to use OBS. Oh, wow. I feel like I just maybe have opened a can of worms because I didn't even think about that. Like, if I want to use OBS and use that OBS then it's the same thing, right? I'm just I'm selecting that key. Okay, got it.
So that's what I was talking about at the beginning about using OBS to standardize your sound and your setup. If you get it dialed in OBS, it doesn't matter what program you're required to stream on because the venue only does things this way. There's going to be no difference in your setup. You're not going to have to, oh crap, I have to figure out how do I sound good on StreamYard because it's a little bit different. How do I, with Zoom, you'll still have to do those suppression settings, the original sound stuff that has appeared in every video I've done, but this one, I think. So it as a musician, it's a really good tool if you can learn how to use it because sound checks with the artists I've worked with that have OBS, the sound checks are easy as pie. They're just like, it never changes. It's always the same and it's done,
Yeah. All right. Well, this is, it's taken a few tries to get it through my thick head, so I'm assuming the same is true for some of our. I don't know. Maybe my head's just way thicker than everybody else's. Ladies and gentlemen, I am, officially gonna let us get to gallery view and say goodbye. But how about we show a big love for Brandon for giving us his time again today? Because seriously, look, dude, it's crazy. You guys all, Brandon is super sweet and kind and available. So he's given you his email address there, but
never a good idea, but you have it. It's done. Can't take it back now.
What I was going to say is you could email me as well, email conference@farmfolk.org if you want to send your questions to me first, and then we can filter them out through Brandon, those that we don't have answers to. And I mean, I'd be happy to get into it. But I think we touched on
Good idea. No.
everything, right? Nice. You guys, thank you so much for being here today. Farm Virtual Connections. We have 2 peer group sessions happening this week. On Tuesday night, the folk DJ and friends. So what started out as just the folk DJs wanting to get together, they decided that they actually wanted to invite others, artists, venues to join them. So the conversation is primarily around folk radio and the DJs, but you're all are welcome. And our bi-weekly peer session is taking place on Thursday. If you have not had a chance to attend these, they really are quite wonderful. Great chance to connect with people and talk more about OBS and Zoom. Just kidding. Don't do it. Seriously, we hope to see you all again very soon. Next week's Tech Talk is in a tentative state right now. So who knows? Maybe we'll ask Brandon back if all else fails. So, all right, guys, that's it for us. We're out. You all are awesome. And we'll see you again soon. Brandon, thanks again so much.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone.